Success, for many, is a dream that feels just out of reach, a goal that remains elusive despite hard work, dedication, and passion. But what if the reason success feels like an impossible pursuit isn't due to a lack of ability or effort, but because of something much deeper, something within the very core of our psyche? Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in the realm of psychology, believed that we often stand in the way of our own success, not because we aren't capable, but because we are unknowingly sabotaging ourselves. The battle for success isn't fought in the realm of talent or opportunities, it's fought in the mind. Within the shadows of our unconscious, hidden patterns and unresolved wounds quietly influence our choices, pushing us away from the success we desire most. The journey to true fulfillment and achievement requires more than simply mastering skills or building a career. It requires the integration of the self, the dark, the light, the whole of who we are. Only by understanding the deep, unconscious forces at play can we begin to reclaim our power and move beyond the self-sabotage that holds us back. The key to unlocking your greatest potential lies not in eradicating the flaws or fears you've avoided, but in facing them, embracing them, and allowing them to guide you toward authentic success. In the pursuit of success, most people wear a mask. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social face we present to the world. It's not inherently fake, rather it's a necessary adaptation to society's expectations. But when this persona becomes too rigid, too disconnected from our authentic inner life, it begins to crack under pressure. Success, ironically, can be the force that exposes those fractures. The mask of ambition is a carefully crafted image. We want to be seen as driven, confident, talented, sometimes even flawless. And this image helps us climb the ladder. Society rewards personas that fit the mold: the tireless achiever, the charismatic leader, the visionary. But behind the mask lies a more complex truth. Jung believed that the more energy we invest in the persona, the more we suppress the parts of ourselves that don't fit that image. These repressed parts don't disappear. They form what he called the shadow. The shadow is the unconscious container of everything we deny, reject, or simply can't accept about ourselves. It includes traits like envy, laziness, insecurity, rage, or fear. And ironically, the more we deny the shadow in the name of ambition, the more power it gains in the unconscious. What we suppress doesn't vanish, it festers. This is where the seeds of self-sabotage are sown. People often ask, why would someone sabotage their own success? The answer lies in this hidden dynamic between the persona and the shadow. Let's say someone builds their identity around being hyper-productive. They pride themselves on their work ethic. That becomes their mask. But maybe deep down there's a part of them that resents always being on, always hustling, never resting. That resentment is pushed into the shadow. Over time, it may manifest as burnout, procrastination, or even impulsive behavior that derails everything they've built. The danger of over-identifying with the persona is that it makes us fragile. When life challenges our image, when we fail, when we're criticized, when success demands emotional depth, we panic. We've spent so long performing that we've forgotten how to simply be. Jung warned that if we fail to engage with our shadow, it will erupt in destructive ways. That's why some people climb to the top, only to implode. Not because they didn't want success, but because their persona couldn't carry the weight of their unacknowledged inner life. There's another layer to this. The world often falls in love with our persona. We get rewarded for the mask. Likes, promotions, praise. They all reinforce the performance. But this creates a psychological trap. If we ever want to step out of that role, to be more honest, more vulnerable, it feels like a threat. Will people still love me if I show them my fear, my doubts, my shadow? That question haunts many high achievers. Jung believed that healing comes not from perfection, but from integration. To truly thrive, we must recognize the mask for what it is, a tool, not an identity. We must turn inward and begin a dialogue with the parts of ourselves we've ignored. This doesn't mean we abandon our ambition. It means we make it deeper, more honest, more whole. Think of success not as a destination, but as a mirror. It reflects both our light and our darkness. If we are unprepared to face what the mirror reveals, we will sabotage the very thing we once longed for. The persona might get us in the door, but only authenticity, forged through the integration of the shadow, can keep us in the room. This journey isn't easy. It requires courage to ask, what am I hiding behind this mask? It means daring to confront the discomfort, the fear, the raw vulnerability we've buried beneath layers of image. But the reward is profound. When we stop performing and start integrating, we unlock a deeper source of power, not the brittle power of appearance, but the resilient strength of self-awareness. In the end, success built on persona alone is fragile, but success that emerges from a whole, integrated self, that's unstoppable. Jung didn't promise comfort, he promised transformation. And it begins the moment we choose to look beyond the mask of ambition and face what lies beneath. Deep within the unconscious mind lies a hidden force that Carl Jung called the shadow. It is the dark counterpart to the persona, made up of all the thoughts, desires, impulses, and emotions we've rejected or disowned. Most people don't realize this, but the shadow isn't just a collection of flaws. It also holds untapped energy, creativity, and power. However, when it is ignored or denied, it doesn't simply fade away. It acts out, often in destructive ways, sabotaging our goals and derailing our dreams just when we're closest to achieving them. Imagine someone driven to succeed, charismatic, disciplined, admired. On the surface, they seem unstoppable. But beneath that surface may live a seething anger, a buried sense of inadequacy, or a deep resentment from childhood. These emotions may not align with the person's polished self-image, so they are pushed down into the shadow. But what's repressed in the unconscious doesn't stay quiet forever. The more we strive to be only the good, hard-working, successful version of ourselves, the more the shadow builds pressure until it bursts out, often at the worst possible time. Self-sabotage often isn't a conscious act. It's the shadow seeking attention. That last-minute procrastination before a big deadline, the destructive relationship patterns, the imposter syndrome that whispers, "You're not good enough." These aren't simply bad habits or character flaws. They are expressions of the shadow trying to speak. Jung warned that what we do not make conscious will return as fate. When we repress parts of ourselves, we project them outward or act them out unconsciously. Sometimes the shadow sabotages us because success itself threatens to unmask it. The higher we climb, the more exposed we feel. Deep down, we may fear that we're frauds, that if we truly succeed, someone will finally see the hidden flaws we've worked so hard to bury. To protect that vulnerable part of us, the shadow throws a wrench in the gears. We miss an opportunity. We lash out. We burn out. We quit just before the breakthrough, not because we don't want success, but because we haven't integrated the part of us that believes we don't deserve it. What makes the shadow so dangerous is its invisibility. You can't fight what you can't see. And in a society obsessed with positivity, hustle culture, and curated perfection, there's little room to acknowledge the darker sides of the self. We're told to focus on the good, stay productive, manifest success. But Jung's philosophy teaches that wholeness, not perfection, is the goal. And wholeness means making room for both light and dark. The path to healing and true achievement lies in bringing the shadow into consciousness. This doesn't mean acting out every dark impulse. It means acknowledging their existence and understanding their roots. Why do I envy others' success? Why do I fear being seen? Why do I feel emptier the closer I get to what I thought I wanted? These questions take courage, but in asking them, we start to reclaim our lost energy. The energy that was once bound in repression can now be transformed into creativity, clarity, and authentic drive. Jung believed that the shadow holds the gold. Within our darkness lies the very power we need to thrive. The anger may become passion. The insecurity may become humility. The fear may become wisdom. But only if we are willing to face it, listen to it, and integrate it into our conscious identity. So when we see people destroy what they've built or walk away from the very thing they claim to want, we are not seeing weakness. We are witnessing a shadow in rebellion. And until that shadow is seen, named, and invited into the light, it will continue to run the show from behind the curtain. The journey to success is not a straight line. It is a spiral inward. It's not about building a perfect self, but about discovering the full self. And the shadow always knows when you're only playing half the game. Why do some people suddenly falter just as they're about to achieve everything they've ever wanted? On the surface, it seems irrational. Why would anyone fear success? But Carl Jung's deep exploration of the psyche reveals a haunting truth. Success is not just a matter of ambition, it's a confrontation with the self. And for many, that confrontation threatens the fragile inner balance they've constructed just to survive. From a Jungian perspective, the unconscious mind is not just filled with random thoughts or memories. It is a living, dynamic force shaped by early experiences, traumas, archetypes, and deep emotional imprints. For those who grew up in environments where love was conditional, where failure was punished or success led to jealousy, attention, or loss, the idea of thriving becomes unconsciously linked to danger. As children, we internalize messages that get buried beneath our awareness, and these messages silently govern our adult behavior. Don't shine too bright. Don't outgrow your family. You're not good enough. These beliefs become survival strategies. They protect us, but they also limit us. So when an opportunity for real success arises, something ancient inside us recoils. That fear isn't laziness or a lack of ambition. It's an unconscious fear of abandonment, rejection, or annihilation. The psyche whispers, if I succeed, I might lose my belonging. I might lose who I am. This is where the survival instinct clashes with ambition, and the unconscious, with its massive influence, almost always wins. Jung believed that we are not solely rational beings. Much of what we do is driven by forces we don't fully understand. So even when we consciously set goals, work hard, and plan every detail, the unconscious may have a completely different agenda. One rooted not in thriving, but in maintaining psychological safety. In other words, many people fear success because it threatens to dismantle the familiar narrative they've built their identity around. This hidden fear often manifests as hesitation, procrastination, or even illness. Just when things are going well, something inside us pulls the brakes. That inner resistance isn't failure. It's a cry from the unconscious to protect the fragile ego from collapse. The fear is not of success itself, but of what success demands: growth, change, risk, and often the letting go of old wounds that have defined us. To move past this, Jung proposed the idea of individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the self. It's not about denying our fears, but becoming aware of them, dialoguing with them, and ultimately transcending them. The path to true success isn't just upward, it's inward. Because until we understand what we're really afraid of, we'll always find a way to stop ourselves, even if the world is ready to celebrate us. Real success, then, isn't just about achieving something external. It's about surviving our own evolution, and for many, that's the scariest thing of all. Carl Jung believed that within the psyche lives not only the wise guide, the hero, or the lover, but also the destroyer. This destructive force, often unconscious, is what many people experience as the inner saboteur. It's the voice that undermines confidence, the impulse that delays action, the sudden craving for chaos right when life begins to feel aligned. While most people view sabotage as a flaw or weakness, Jung's work reveals it as an archetypal force, one that must be understood, not just resisted. The inner saboteur isn't random, it's an expression of the shadow, but with a unique role. It arises to protect the ego from perceived psychological danger. Imagine success as a spotlight, bright, exposing, unrelenting. For someone whose unconscious is filled with shame, guilt, or a belief in their unworthiness, standing in that light can feel unbearable. And so, the saboteur steps in, cleverly derailing progress before the ego can be found out or overwhelmed. It might appear as procrastination, substance abuse, toxic relationships, or perfectionism. But underneath each pattern lies the same fear. If I truly succeed, my flaws will be visible. I will be judged, rejected, or abandoned. Rather than risk that pain, the psyche sabotages success to remain hidden, even if it means staying small. Jung described this as a conflict between the ego's desire and the soul's deeper wounds. The saboteur doesn't hate you. It's trying to keep you safe based on outdated data from your past. This is why positive affirmations or motivational speeches rarely work long-term. Until the archetype of the saboteur is acknowledged, dialogued with, and integrated, it will continue to operate in the shadows, disrupting your progress in increasingly creative ways. Real transformation begins not by killing the saboteur, but by asking what it's trying to protect and why it still believes destruction is safer than growth. The roots of self-sabotage often stretch far deeper than we think. Deep into childhood, where the foundation of the psyche is formed. Carl Jung believed that early experiences, especially those involving emotional pain, rejection, or unmet needs, leave behind psychological imprints. These imprints become internal patterns, shaping how we view ourselves, the world, and our place within it. They become the unconscious blueprint for how we respond to life, including how we respond to success. In the eyes of a child, every experience is magnified. Love and attention aren't just pleasant, they are survival. If love is withheld, if affection is conditional, if success is met with criticism, jealousy, or withdrawal, the child learns to associate thriving with danger. Even the most subtle cues, an angry glance from a parent when the child outshines a sibling, or a feeling of being invisible unless performing, can instill a powerful message. It's not safe to succeed. And because children do not have the capacity to question or analyze their environment, they internalize these messages as truths about themselves. These truths become part of the shadow, the unconscious container of everything the ego cannot accept. As we grow older, these imprints don't simply disappear. They live on as core beliefs and silent programs that run beneath the surface of our adult lives. A person might consciously crave success, but if their unconscious mind associates success with danger, loss, or abandonment, they will find a way to sabotage it every time. Not because they are weak, but because their psyche is trying to protect them based on outdated data. The wound, left unhealed, becomes the dominant force. Take the example of someone who grew up with emotionally distant parents. Perhaps they learned early that being vulnerable or emotional didn't lead to connection. Instead, they were praised only when they achieved something, so they learned to perform. But the flip side of that pattern is devastating. When success does not immediately lead to love or acceptance, it feels empty. And if success threatens to make them stand out too much, it becomes frightening. Deep down, the psyche might whisper, "If I become too successful, I'll be alone. No one will understand me." And so the inner saboteur activates, not to destroy, but to protect from that perceived isolation. Jung believed in the concept of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of the psyche, including the wounded inner child. But individuation cannot happen without facing those early imprints. Until we bring awareness to those childhood wounds, they continue to operate in the background, running our lives like a hidden script. And often that script ends in failure, not because we are incapable, but because we are afraid of what success might awaken within us. The fear of thriving is rarely conscious. Most people don't wake up thinking, "I'm scared of being successful." Instead, they experience the symptoms. They get sick before big opportunities. They delay crucial tasks. They attract drama into their lives right when things are going well. And underneath it all is a younger part of themselves, hurt, afraid, unseen, pulling the strings. That part is still stuck in survival mode, still operating as if the world is dangerous, as if being too visible will lead to punishment or abandonment. One of the most powerful ideas Jung proposed was that healing comes through integration, not elimination. We don't get rid of the wounded child, we listen to it. We don't silence the shadow, we explore it. When we become curious about our patterns, especially the ones that sabotage our dreams, we begin to loosen their grip. We start asking deeper questions. Whose voice is this? What am I protecting myself from? When did I first learn that success is dangerous? By bringing awareness to these wounds, we begin to rewrite the story. We realize that success doesn't have to come at the cost of love, that visibility doesn't guarantee rejection, and that thriving doesn't mean betrayal. It means choosing a new path, one informed not by fear, but by consciousness. Jung's work reminds us that what remains unconscious will rule our lives, and we will call it fate. But when we dare to look into the shadow, when we trace the roots of our sabotage back to the wounded places within us, we reclaim our power. The wound may have shaped us, but it doesn't have to define us. True transformation begins when we stop trying to escape our pain, and instead meet it with compassion, curiosity, and courage. And in doing so, we unlock the freedom to not just succeed, but to fully receive, hold, and embody that success without fear. That is the real power, not perfection, not control, but wholeness. In a world obsessed with achievement and image, we're often taught that success means becoming flawless, perfectly productive, endlessly positive, always in control. But Carl Jung proposed something radically different. He believed the path to real, lasting success isn't about perfection at all. It's about integration, not becoming better at wearing the mask but finally taking it off, not eliminating the shadow but facing it, welcoming it into consciousness, and allowing its truth to shape a more authentic self. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, we grow not by pretending our flaws don't exist, but by bringing them into the light of awareness. This is the process of individuation, Jung's term for the lifelong journey of becoming whole. In this process, we stop striving to be only the persona we show to the world and begin reclaiming the parts of ourselves we've disowned. The fear, the rage, the envy, the vulnerability, the insecurity, these are not enemies to defeat. They are aspects of the self that must be integrated. The modern obsession with self-improvement often leads us further from ourselves. We try to become ideal versions of who we think we should be. We push harder, hustle more, curate our image, silence our doubts, and suppress anything that doesn't align with our personal brand of success. But in doing so, we split from our true nature. We lose access to success. But in doing so, we widen the gap between who we truly are and who we pretend to be. This split becomes exhausting, and eventually it becomes unsustainable. The further we drift from our wholeness, the more likely we are to experience inner conflict, burnout, anxiety, or sabotage. Jung's wisdom reminds us that healing doesn't come from escape. It comes from return. Return to the self, to the complexity, to the contradictions that make us human. Integration means owning all parts of the psyche, even the ones we've been taught to hate. It's standing face to face with the inner critic and understanding where it came from. It's acknowledging the part of you that's afraid of success and saying, "I see you, let's talk." When these disowned aspects are recognized, not judged, not suppressed, they begin to lose their power to control us from the shadows. They transform from saboteurs into allies, offering wisdom and energy that had long been trapped in the unconscious. This isn't easy work. It requires courage to look inward, honesty to admit what we've been running from, and patience to hold space for all that arises. But the reward is profound: authenticity. When you no longer need to hide or perform, your success becomes rooted in truth, not illusion. You no longer chase validation. You create from a place of alignment. And paradoxically, this makes you more powerful, more magnetic, and more resilient than ever before. Authentic success, through the Jungian lens, isn't about arriving at some ideal state. It's about becoming deeply familiar with your own inner landscape, your patterns, wounds, gifts, and limits. It's about living with awareness and choice, instead of blindly repeating inherited scripts. This doesn't mean you won't still feel fear or doubt, but you'll recognize those feelings for what they are: echoes of the past, not prophecies of the future. Individuation is not a destination, but a path, a lifelong unfolding, and as you walk it, you discover something remarkable. Your shadow holds not just the parts you feared, but also the creativity, drive, and emotional depth you need to thrive. The parts of you that once sabotaged your dreams now become the very fuel that drives them forward. Integration brings coherence, it brings peace, and from that place of inner wholeness, real success becomes not only possible, but inevitable. At the heart of Carl Jung's philosophy lies one of the most transformative ideas in all of psychology: that the very parts of ourselves we try hardest to deny, our fears, our rage, our shame, our jealousy, are not obstacles to our growth, but gateways to it. In fact, Jung argued that true individuation, true wholeness, only occurs when we stop trying to exile the so-called bad parts of ourselves and begin to understand them, not as enemies, but as essential elements of our soul's evolution. To embrace the whole self means turning toward the darkness, not with fear or guilt, but with curiosity and compassion. It means accepting that we are not one-dimensional beings. We are not only kind or only cruel, strong or weak, successful or broken. We are all of it, all the time. The psyche is a dynamic interplay of opposites, and our greatness is not found in choosing one side over the other, but in learning how to hold the tension between them. The more we try to be only good, the more the repressed shadow acts out behind the scenes. But when we allow ourselves to be human, fully, unapologetically human, we begin to unlock a deeper level of power and freedom. Many people fear that facing their darkness will lead to collapse or chaos, but Jung teaches the opposite, that through facing our inner darkness, we are actually restored to balance, that those very impulses we're ashamed of contain energy, the energy to create, to transform, to lead, to love with greater depth. For example, someone who represses their anger may find themselves constantly drained, people-pleasing, unable to set boundaries. But when that anger is acknowledged and understood, not indulged blindly, but integrated consciously, it becomes a source of strength and clarity. What was once destructive becomes directive. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The gold is in the dark." To reach our true potential, we must become intimate with our complexity. This doesn't mean acting out our worst impulses, nor does it mean excusing harmful behavior. It means taking radical responsibility for who we are beneath the surface. It means asking, what part of me have I denied? And listening without judgment. The answers are not always comfortable, but they are always honest. And in that honesty, we begin to align with a deeper sense of purpose, one not built on performance or ego, but on soul. This path is not for the faint of heart. It demands that we let go of the illusion of control, the masks we wear to feel safe, the stories we tell ourselves to justify our stuckness. It asks us to confront the parts of ourselves that have been exiled for years, even decades. And yet, this confrontation is not a destruction, it is a rebirth. One where success is no longer a performance, but a reflection of inner alignment. Where goals are no longer driven by fear, but guided by clarity and conviction. Where the self is no longer divided, but whole. In Jungian psychology, the self is the totality of the conscious and unconscious mind, a unified field of all that we are. And so, when we embrace the whole self, we tap into something larger than personal ambition. We begin to live from a place of authenticity that resonates with others, not because we're perfect, but because we're real. People are drawn to wholeness, they sense it. And when we walk this path, we don't just transform ourselves. We become a mirror that reflects back to others what's possible when you stop running from your darkness and start integrating it. This is the true meaning of success, in the Jungian sense. Not the accumulation of accolades or the illusion of flawlessness, but the embodiment of the full self. A self that has walked through the fire of its own fears and come out forged, focused, and free. When we do this, success is no longer something we chase. It becomes who we are.